My name is Luz Méndez. I am from Guatemala, and I am the Vice President of the Executive Board of the National Union of Guatemalan Women. This association, in alliance with some other women's organizations and human rights organizations, have been working for several years in order to heal the wounds from the past. Concretely, we have been working with women who are survivors of sexual violence during the world. We have been organizing women's groups so those women are able to overcome the feeling of being guilty of what happened to them and the feeling of shame, transforming themselves from victims to actors. So this is something that we have been doing, and as part of that struggle, last year we organized a women's tribunal. As the impunity on sexual violence against women during the war is total, meaning not a single case has been sentenced at the Guatemalan judicial system, this women's tribunal was an alternative way of justice and was also a way that the survivors had the opportunity to speak up for the first time in their lives about the experience they endured, and they were strong enough to ask justice and reparations to the Guatemalan state. I have been an activist as part of the women's movement for a long time. In the past, I took part in the peace negotiations. I was a member of the delegation of the Guatemalan National Revolutionary Unity to the peace negotiations. I was the only woman member of this delegation. And there I was struggling to achieve the recognition of women's rights in the accords. And we managed to do it. So after the signing of the peace accords, I have been working for building peace and for women's rights. And as a group of women, we realized that no peace can be built without achieving justice for women. So that's why I became involved in this common struggle. When I was taking part in the Guatemalan peace negotiations, especially when we were discussing the topic of the rights of the indigenous people at the table of peace negotiations, I raised the issue of sexual violence against women during the war. The overwhelming majority of them were indigenous. So I raised the topic at the table, and we included some provisions in favor of women, but sexual violence was put apart. So I was very disappointed about that. I didn't have the power to push it enough to have it included into the accord. We were able to include a provision about sexual harassment with a specific measure in favor of indigenous women. But the huge problem of sexual violence against women against indigenous women in the world was not included. So that sense of insatisfaction made me feel that I had a debt. So years later, I became involved in this struggle for justice for women in the world because of that debt. Women, we are half of the population, so we have the right to equality. And because this is part of building democracy, this is part of building peace, this is part of building a justice world and a long-lasting peace in the world.